Good afternoon. Today we're going to be looking at the modal of necessity, have to. Before we start, let's talk about what modals are. So modals are words that add extra meaning to verbs. There are many different modals. We have modals of obligation, modals of suggestion, possibility, ability, permission and offers, prohibition, necessity, request, and past habits. Today we will look at the modal have to, which is used for necessity. Let's talk about the usage, the meaning. So we use have to express a necessity. Right here, the girl, she is feeding her puppies. She is telling her puppies, you have to eat. You have to eat. Okay, so it's a need. They have a necessity. They are hungry. So you have to eat. Let's look at another example. Okay, so again, we use have to express a necessity. Here, this man is very, very, very thirsty. He's thinking about water, so he might think, I have to drink. I have to drink. Okay, he has a necessity for water. Now let's look at the rules. Okay, the first rule is that have to comes before the verb, but after the subject. So here we have a sentence, I have to drink. I is the subject, have to is the modal, and drink is the verb. Okay, so you can see how have to comes before the verb and after the subject. Okay, let's look at another example, another rule. If the subject is a third person noun, then we change have to has to as a third person. Okay, so for example, he has to drink. Okay, he is a third person singular noun, has to the modal, and drink is the verb. Let's look at another example that shows this rule. Okay, if the subject is third person noun, we change have to has to. So the dog has to eat. Okay, so here the dog is third person singular, has to is the modal, and eat as the verb. So just remember, if you have third person singular, it has to, they, we, you, I, have to. Moving forward now. So if we want to negate or express a lack of necessity, we add do and not before have to express a lack of necessity. So for example, you do not have to call. Okay, so there's no need. It's a lack. Please don't use have not to. Okay, you have not to call. That is not correct. Okay, all right, let's move on forward now. With have to, add do before the subject to make a question. So if you want to make a question, we just simply add do before the subject. Okay, so I is my subject, have to is a modal, study harder, and so do I have to study? Okay, let's look at some examples. So the dog has to eat. Question. Yes, no question. Does the dog have to eat? Remember to add do before the subject. Okay, now the subject is the dog. If I want to make a WH question, I add a WH word. So who, what, where, when, why, how. What does the dog have to eat? Okay, let's practice this. You have to speak. Okay, yes, no question. Do you have to speak? WH question. Why do you have to speak? Okay, let's look at another example. He has to go. Yes, no question. Does he have to go? Okay, and then remember that if I add do, the tense moves from the modal verb to the auxiliary do. Where, WH question. Where does he have to go? Okay, let's look at some error correction exercises for have to. Okay, so he have to study. Is this correct? Take 5 seconds. The answer is no. Modal has to with he, she, it, and singular nouns. So singular third person nouns. So he, the answer is no. So he has to study. Okay. Let's look at another example. They has to study. Is this correct? Well, it's not. It's have. So the answer is no. They have to study. Okay. Let's look at another example. He do not have to study. Is this correct? Take 5 seconds. Okay. The answer, well, does with he, she, it, and third person singular nouns. So the answer is no, it is not correct. Should we correct it? Yes, he doesn't have to study. Okay, so we delete do not. Doesn't have to. Okay, next, they have not to study. Is this correct? Okay, well, we use don't with have to. Okay, so the answer is no. They don't have to study. Okay, so quick summary. The rule number 1, add have to before the verb to express necessity. You have to breed. Use has to for third person subjects. He has to come to school. Use do not before have to for lack of necessity. You do not have to come to school. And add do before subjects to make questions. Does the dog have to eat? Well, thank you so much for watching. If you have any thoughts, questions, or concerns, please email me, and I look forward to seeing you in class.